Hello friends, welcome to CEC Live Lectures. Dear friends, today in this session we are going to continue with our series on principles of management. We have conducted many sessions for you in the series, and from today onwards we are going to talk on the functions of management. We are specifically going to discuss on what planning is, what are the characteristics of planning, what are the advantages of planning, as well as we are going to discuss on the process of planning. And for the discussion on the topic, we have with us in our studios Dr. Bipin Agrawal. Dr. Bipin Agrawal is a principal in Sri Aurobindo College, University of Delhi. Dr. Agrawal is a prolific professor who believes that the students' community to be benefited always. Therefore, he makes persistent and constant efforts through the live platform of CEC. He gives his best. So let's take advantages from his experiences and let's try to understand what planning is and what is the process of planning. Hello, sir. Welcome to the lecture.
Thank you, Ritika. So, friends, in this session, we'll start discussing about the meaning of the planning, the characteristics of the planning, and its advantages and disadvantages. In generic terms, planning is the systematic process of establishing a need and then working out the best way to meet the need. Planning means thinking about the future so that you can do something about it. In our day-to-day life, in our economic life, in our non-economic life, for social organization, for every type of organization, planning is must. Even in our personal life, every day we plan. Without plan, we cannot make our life systematic, and without planning, we cannot make our life meaningful. In large organizations, we do systematic planning, we write down the plans, we put it in the black and white, but in our day-to-day life, we plan in our subconscious mind and conscious mind. I mean, like when you go to bed, every day you plan for the next day. What you will do, what time you will get up in the morning, what you will do, in what time you will get ready for your college, because you are most of you must be collegiate. So at what time you will be getting ready for the college, what will be the time schedule for that, I mean, how much time will it take in reaching the college. You plan accordingly, and in college, how many hours you will be studying, how many periods you will be attending, and after coming back home, what you will do, which subjects you will prepare, because you have a goal. You have a goal in terms of your career, that you have to make career in your life. For making career, education is one step for getting a good career. And if you want to get good education, you have to plan your education, you have to plan your studies. In order to achieve this objective of good career, you put hard work, you plan your things, and so that you can achieve the goal of getting good marks in the universities, colleges, enhancing your knowledge, and then finally getting a placement in a good company or a good organization. Similarly, in the organization, as the size of the organization increases, when organized activity takes place, there is no one individual, there are a group of people who are involved. And since there are a group of people, large number of people are involved, we have to coordinate the activities of different people, and we have to plan for everybody, for every level, at every level, and for every functions of management. So we have to plan. From the point of view of management, planning can be defined as an intellectual process which involves setting objectives for a given time period, formulating various course of action to achieve them, and then selecting the best possible alternates from the different course of action. In this definition, 2-3 things are important which will be discussed in length: intellectual process, setting objectives, time period, and selecting the best possible alternates from the different course of action. We say planning bridges the gap between where we are standing today and where we want to reach. At the planning stage itself, you set up your goals, you set up your objectives, and you see to it that in order to achieve these objectives and goals, what is the process involved, what is the procedure involved for getting these objectives. You do it at the planning level itself. Thus, the key task of planning is deciding the future course of action. The key ingredients of planning is time, means you make plans for a particular period of time, and the key outcome is accomplishment of objective. What is the objective of the planning? That you want to accomplish your goal. We say successful companies always plan the end before beginning. Here I am taking an example of Apple company, the world famed Mac maker. Apple under Steve Jobs planned the end product before launching it. In 2005, when the demand for iPod mini remained huge, the Nano was launched, effectively destroying the revenue stream of an existing product. And while iPod sales were still going through the roof, Steve Jobs launched the iPhone, which combined iPod, cell phone and internet access into a single device. Means that they plan their products in advance so that the people can get the new product in time. Now I'll tell you briefly the characteristics of planning. I'll name them and then we'll discuss one by one. Planning is goal-oriented, choice-making, primary function, forward-looking, intellectual process, dynamic process, pervasive, continuous process. Let us discuss these points one by one. We say planning is goal-oriented. What do you mean by goal? Means when the organization is being established, it is being established with an objective. And with the objective, you have to set certain goals. The goals are short-term goals, long-term goals, medium-term goals, and you tries to achieve these goals. So the very first step involved in the planning is make your goals clear. The first and the foremost task in planning is setting up objectives and goals. Setting up of goal is essential because they give a direction to further course of action in the planning. Means how you will achieve these goals. These goals can be long-term or short-term, can be put in qualitative or quantitative terms, and can be formulated for different levels. Different levels means whether strategic level or operational level or administrative level. The other characteristics of planning is primary function. We say planning precedes all other functions of management. It is the first and the prime function of management. All functions of management are done taking reference from what has been planned. Hence, a good planning decides the quality of rest of the functions of management as well. Means if your planning is good, there is a great likelihood that your other function of management will also be good. Because at the planning itself you decide how it has to be done. We say planning is forward-looking. Planning is futuristic. Planning is a forward-looking process. It deals with the forecasting and predictions of future events to eliminate the element of uncertainty. Whenever we plan, I said plan can be short-term, plan can be long-term. So at the planning stage itself, you foresee there should be a foresightedness in the manager that what is be the environmental dynamics, and keeping in mind the environmental dynamics, the manager has to plan. So that's why we call it's a forward-looking. Means you have to be futuristic. You look for the future, what is going to happen in the future, and then you plan accordingly. That's why we call it forward-looking. Next is intellectual process. Planning is an intellectual process. It is not only requires a mind which can peep into the future, but also can design appropriate solutions to the problems and challenges lying on the way of goal achievement. Hence, the quality of planning vary according to the mind of the managers. Means the manager has to use his intellectual capabilities, his intuitions, his judgment, his experience, and on the basis of his judgment, experience, he has to plan. The environmental constraints are there. Within those environmental constraints, how the objective has to be achieved on the basis of the experience and knowledge of the manager has to plan. That's why we say it's an intellectual process. What it means is there is no ready formula, there is no ready answer for a problem. Manager has to apply his intellectual capabilities to make good plans. We say it's pervasive. Pervasive means all around. Planning is found at all levels of management. Top management look for strategic planning, means basically policy designing. Middle management is in charge of administrative planning. Lower management has to concentrate on operational planning, how the work has to be done. Lower management has to concentrate on operating planning. Although the time spent by the high level of managers in the process of planning is comparatively more than the time spent by the mid-level and lower level managers. It is therefore clear that all managers working in an enterprise have to plan their activities. Means the top management, I just said, that the top management is more involved in the strategic planning, in which area, in which line of the business the company has to go. What are the government policies? If the government policies changes, how the company will adapt itself according to the government policies. The mid-level managers look for more of administrative planning. Right? Administrative planning means the division of work and all those things, allocating duties to different individuals. And the lower level management, basically operational aspect. Operational aspect means how the objective is to be achieved, in the sense at the shop level, how the activities will be undertaken, how the how the scheduling will be made, and all these things is being done at the lower level. So different level of managers, but at all levels the planning takes place, whether at the high level or at the lower level. We say planning is a continuous process. Continuous process means it's not that at the beginning of the year or at the beginning of the 5 years, or if you're making plan for 10 years, before the 10 years, you plan only once and then you sleep over it. No. Plan is a continuous process, because while planning, you are dealing with the environment, and environment is dynamic, it keeps on changing. Since the environment is dynamic, it keeps on changing, you will have to change your plan according to the need of the organization. So, the planning takes place on a continuous basis. We say planning is a continuous activity. It is required for every quarter, every month, every week, and every day of the year. Every minute, a plan is accomplished and new plan is designed in the direction of goal achievement. We say planning is dynamic process. Dynamic process means keeps on changing. It's not a static activity. Planning is done keeping in mind the environment in an organization is surrounded by. It is affected by the changes in the internal and external environment of the organization. The goals of the organization need to be revised in accordance with the changes in the political, economic, social, and legal condition of the country. While planning, a good manager always ensures flexibility so that necessary revision can be made as and when needed. Therefore, it is clear that planning is a dynamic process. Like, for example, today itself I was reading in the paper that from today onwards, VS6 fuel will be available in the Delhi market. Means there are a lot of environmental constraints. Keeping the environmental constraints in mind, keeping the level of pollution in Delhi, the companies are changing their policies. The government of India is changing its policies, and they are coming out with those fuels which creates less pollution. So BS6 is a right step in that direction, and the automakers have to plan their engine, will have to plan their model in such a manner which can adapt this type of fuel. The point I am trying to say that we say organization planning is a dynamic process. Dynamic process means as the environment changes, so is the plans. If there is any change in the political environment, the legal environment, the social environment, or any other changes that takes place, the organization, the manager has to change his plan according to the changed environment. And not only you have to change, but you have to be flexible. Flexible in the sense, if there is this situation, you will adapt this plan. If the situation changes, you will adopt the other plan. We say plan A, plan B, plan C. Means it's a flexible process. While you design your plan in such a manner so that it remains flexible. It can be easily adapted according to the changed environment. We say planning other characteristics of the planning is choice making. Planning is required wherever large number of alternative forces are available to an organization. Means if there is only one alternate, there is no question of choice, and there will be no planning because you will have to follow it. But for every decision, there are alternate course of action. And planning is the choice making. It is basically decision making process. An action may be performed by many ways, but there is a particular way to perform an action which is most appropriate to the organization. Planning involves evaluating all these courses of action to it in the light of cost, benefit, and resource constraints faced by firm. For example, if a company wants to raise finance, for raising finance, we all know there are broadly two sources of finance, equity source and the debt source. You will have to evaluate that what will be the cost and benefit involved in raising money through equity, what will be the cost benefit involved in raising money through debt. Within equity, you will say whether it is an equity share, whether it is a preference shares. Within debt, you will say whether loan from banks, loan from financial institutions, loan from taking fixed deposit from the public, or on any other mode of debt. So means you have to evaluate each of these mode of finance, and keeping in mind the risk involved, keeping in mind the cost involved, you have to make your financial design, you have to make your, say, I would say, the liability side of the balance sheet. What I'm trying to say that while making a choice of raising the money, there are different alternates which I've just talked about, and out of these alternates, you have to evaluate them, and then you have to make a choice making that which is the best source for your company, for your organization, keeping in mind the other constraints, and then you decide finally that this you will raise, your company will raise money through this. This is called choice making. Companies have to plan telescopically, not microscopically. What I'm saying is, on the basis of characteristics, I've just taken an example that say for example, your company, all large companies makes a vision, say vision 2028. Now there is a 2018, we are making a vision for the company 2018. Since I said just now in the characteristics that planning is forward looking. When you are making a vision of 2028, what you're saying that what you're planning is that where you want to see your company in the year 2028. The world is changing all around us. To continue to thrive as a business over the next 10 years and beyond, we must look ahead, understand the trends and forces that will shape our business in the future, and move swiftly to prepare for what is to come. We must get ready for tomorrow, today itself. That is what our 2028 vision is all about. It creates a long-term destination for our business and provides us with a roadmap for winning together with our other partners. What it implies is that when you are making a plan, you are making the plan for forward-looking. Say if I'm making a vision for 10 years, means after 10 years, where I want to see my company, and you have to plan it. And you have to, for achieving that objective, for achieving that goal, you have to make plans and you have to make a process that how you will able to achieve it. Now I'll be talking of advantages of planning. Means so far we have discussed about what is planning and what are the characteristics of the planning. Now we'll discuss that if you plan, what are the benefits that will accrue to the company, what will be the plan that will accrue to the organization. We say failing to plan is planning to fail. Means if you don't plan, there is all likelihood that your organization is going to fail. If you're not planning, it means you are planning for your failure of your organization. We say planning provides direction. Planning is concerned with predetermined course of action. It provides the direction to the efforts of employees. Planning makes clear what employees have to do, how to do it, when to do it. By starting in advance how work has to be done, planning provides direction for action. If there were no planning, employees would be working in different directions and organization would not be able to achieve its desired goals. See, in the organization, there are a large number of employees who are working in the organization. There are many functions that are performed in the organization for achieving that goal, for achieving the overall goal of the organization. If different people working in the organization, if different functionals are working in different direction, then the overall goal will not be achieved. What we do in the planning is that planning provides a sense of direction among the employees, among the people who are working in the organization. So every employee know that what is expected of him and how he has to perform his duty, what is the procedure involved, what is the time schedule involved, and what are the rules, what are the regulations. We will discuss all these things later on. What are the rules and regulations, what are the procedures, and when things are clear at the planning itself, it provides a sense of direction to the people who are working in the organization. It reduces the uncertainties. See, future, what is going to happen in the future, you cannot avoid it. But if you are prepared for the future, you can minimize that risk. You can prepare your organization accordingly. We say Organizations have to face many uncertainties and unexpected situations every day. Planning helps the manager to face the uncertainty because planners try to foresee the future by making some assumptions regarding future, keeping in mind their past experience and scanning of business environment. 4G has been introduced in India. Reliance Jio came out with the rates that were so competitive that other companies faced a challenge. What you have to do is, you have to foresee that if this situation arises, that if the rates are being slashed, what will be your strategy, what will be your plan? And as the Jio company, as the Reliance Communication reduces its call rate, the Airtel, the Vodafone, the Idea, and all other companies which are in the business, they also reduce, they follow the suit. Because if you want to sustain in the market, you will have to be very competitive. And in order to be competitive, the uncertainties that arises in the future, you have to prepare your plans. And now in India, we are talking of 4Gs. In the West, people are talking of 5G and 6G. So companies from these days itself, they are planning, although they are implementing 4G, but they are also planning for 5G. Because they know if the 5G is being introduced in the world and if these companies don't plan, then they will not able to retain their market share. So what it implies is that all the uncertainties that are going to arise in future, you have to prepare your organization in advance so that these uncertainties can be handled in a proper manner. It ensures coordination. Main feature of planning process is that it formulates a hierarchy such as the departmental plans are derived from main organizational plan. It leads to coordination as predetermined plans, ensures clarity of thoughts and action, and work can be carried out smoothly. Unless there is a coordination among the different people in the working of the organization, there will be no proper sense of direction. We will be not able to achieve the overall goal. Ultimate goal is to achieve the overall goal. So if we plan, because as I said earlier, the planning stage itself, the functions of different managers is being determined in advance. Everything is being decided in advance. So there is a proper coordination. People know that what is expected from them, and there is a proper coordination of work. And the schedules are being fixed. There is a proper coordination of work. We say increases organizational efficiency and effectiveness. Planning involves the selection of most profitable course of action that would lead to the best result at the minimum cost. It reduces overlapping and wasteful activities. I said planning involves choice. When you have choice of different course of action, which course of action you choose? You choose that course of action which is most efficient and which involves least cost. Since you are choosing that course of action which involves least cost and the maximum revenue it will generate, so obviously the organizational efficiency and effectiveness will increase, because the time involved in performing the job will also be get minimized. The cost involved in performing the job will be minimized. That's why we say planning helps in increasing the organization efficiency and effectiveness. Makes control effective. One of the very important function of planning is controlling. Whatever you have planned, unless there is an evaluation process that whether these plans are achieved or not, what is the advantage of planning? So if we plan properly, at the planning stage itself, we evolve such systems so that the controlling becomes possible, so that we know that to what extent plans are being achieved. The controlling function of management relates to the comparison of the planned performance with the actual performance. In the absence of plans, a management will have no standards for controlling others' performance. Means unless there is a proper plan, will not have any standard with which we can compare. And if we have plan, we'll have proper standards with which we can compare and we can evaluate. So we say planning makes control effective. Successful companies are visionaries. Means on the basis of these advantages, I can say all these successful companies are visionary. Like if you take the example of Southwest Airlines, to become the world's most loved, most flown, and most airlines profitable. This is the mission. This is the objective. This is the goal. And for achieving this goal, the Southwest Airlines pursue their efforts so that these goals can be achieved. And this is the advantage of the planning. Like another example, I can say Subway, quick service restaurant. franchisee in the world while delivering fresh, delicious sandwiches and an exceptional experience to the customer. Successful companies are far-sighted yet see everything in tits and bits. I'm taking example of here Walmart, the world's largest retail stores. Walmart's successful is the stuff of legend. Walmart's ability to provide customers with everyday low prices is the result of a process that was built on some core principles and procedures, that is, the minimizing of operating cost. Walton, the founder of the Walmart, keeps a tight fist and pinched his pennies. It keeps noted that he continued to drive an old pickup truck and to share budget hotel room on business trips even after he had acquired great wealth due to Walmart's success. Means that all the successful business, they plan properly and they execute their plans in a manner so that their objective is being achieved. So these are the few advantages of the planning.
No, thank you, sir. Thank you so very much for explaining us in detail what planning is, as well as we discussed on the advantages of the planning. Friends, you are requested to be with us as we are back after a short break and we would be discussing more. Till then, keep watching us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello friends, welcome back to this session. Friends, today we are discussing on planning. In our previous session we discussed what planning is, as well as the characteristics and advantages, disadvantages we covered in the previous session. Now we are going to discuss on the limitations of planning, as well as would be discussing on the process of planning. What is the process of planning is the part of discussion, and for the discussion on the topic we have with us in our studios Dr. Vipin Agrawal. Dr. Vipin Agrawal is a principal in Sri Aurobindo College, University of Delhi. Let's welcome our guest Dr. Agrawal and let's try to understand the limitations and the planning process. Hello sir, welcome to the lecture.
So friends, in the previous session we were discussing about what planning is all about, the characteristics of the planning, and the advantages of planning. I'll just briefly mention about the limitations of the planning. Limitation in the sense there are certain constraints, and while plan we keep in mind that these constraints will limit the usefulness of the planning. Like we say, sometimes, I'll not say always, sometimes planning brings rigidity. Means if you prepare the plan in advance and for everybody is clear that what he's supposed to do, and then sometimes people follow only those things that has been instructed to them. Means the dynamism that should be there in the organization, the dynamism that should be there in the employees, that is missing sometime when you plan everything in advance. Means the type of flexibility which the employee should enjoy by planning, by making rigid plan, I would say, this flexibility is lacking. That's why sometimes the employees who are working in the organization, they are not able to give their best. Second thing I will say that if the environment is changing very fast, means as we know that environment is dynamic, and in a dynamic environment when things are changing very fast and swift, in that situation sometimes this plan fails because you have foreseen. Planning is forward looking, planning is farsightedness. You have planned for X, Y, Z different situations, and if the situations move so fast that the moment you think of the situation X, the situation Y arises. I mean, by the time you plan, you are trying to execute the situation according to the situation Y, the moment the situation Z arises. So if the environment is very dynamic, then it will make the advantages of planning limited. And we also say that planning itself is not a guarantee of the success. Now, if you prepare the plans and you think we have good plans in hand, and by good plans you are assured of your success, it is not a guarantee. Because when you merely plan, the plans are to be executed. The efficiency of the planning depends on how efficiently they are being executed. So execution part is as important and as the planning itself is. So planning the works under such limitations, but nevertheless, I would say that efficient management overcomes these limitations and they plan in a manner so that they can get the advantages of the limitations which we have discussed in the previous session. Now friends, I'll be discussing about the process of planning. As I said, in every organization, large or small, economic organization, non-economic organization, planning is being made. Government of a country designs and communicate its plans to all before going into action. Means like in India, we also make 5-year plan, 1-year plan, 2-year plan. Every year, the budget is being prepared by the finance minister, and at the end of the February, the budget is being, this year at the end of the January, the budget was being presented before the parliament. What are you doing? You are planning that how your income, where you will spend the money, where the government will spend its money in the coming year, from where the income will come. So it is nothing but the planning for the next year. It is nothing but the financial plan of the country, financial plan of a government. It is a research plan that helps a researcher in getting a grant from research funding organization. If you want to write good research, if you want to get a PhD degree, you have to make a plan in advance. What you want to do, what will be your research methodology, and how you will proceed for that. And you have to make a plan. You have to submit these plans to the funding agencies, and if the funding agencies accept your proposal, then they give you a grant for making research. The point I am trying to make is that it is a process involved in the planning, that you have to make plans in advance. You have to, only then you will be able to execute it properly. Every homemaker, student or professional in this world plan their next day before going to sleep. I have already discussed this. So now let's discuss planning as a process. The definition of planning states that it is an intellectual, dynamic and continuous process. We have already discussed the meaning of the intellectual, dynamic and continuous process. In order to plan, there are series of activities that need to be done systematically, and in principles of management, we call it planning process. Means at the planning stage, when you decide that these are the activities involved in achieving our goals. So what you are doing is you are basically planning and you are setting your goals. After setting the goals, how these goals will be achieved, this is being planned. The planning process is a fundamental function of management and should result in the best possible degree of need satisfaction given the resource available. We say it's a fundamental function, and since it is a basic function, the goal is, the purpose is the need satisfaction, so that the resources that are available, the constraint under which we are working in the organization, these resources can be most optimally utilized, and the satisfaction of the consumer, satisfaction of the management, satisfaction of the different stakeholders can be achieved. See, like I have shown it through a diagram. First thing is set goals. Then gather data. Gather data means gather information for achieving that goal. Analyze the data. Create plan and implement plan. And after implementing plan, not only implementation is important, but monitoring of the plan is also important. That is called the process of planning. Now let's discuss one by one the steps in the planning process. I am just reading out the steps in the planning process, then we will discuss each of them. Perception of opportunities means you have to perceive what are the opportunities available. Establishment of objectives, planning premises, identification of alternatives, selection of a plan, formulating supporting plans, deciding sequence of activities, providing the future evaluation. Now let's discuss one by one. The first step in the process of planning is perception of opportunities. What are the opportunities available in the environment? And on the basis of those opportunities that are available in the environment, you plan. You first for setting the goals, you have to perceive the opportunities that are available. As we have already stated, that planning is a dynamic process and can never be performed without environmental scanning and diagnosis. Therefore, awareness of an opportunity is the real starting point for planning. It includes a preliminary look at possible future opportunities, analyzing them in the light of the strengths and weaknesses, and having a vision of what we expect to gain. At this moment, I can think of, like say, for example, Future Group. Kishore Biani, the founder of Big Bazaar, I would say organized retail store in India. The Kishore Biani 20 years back foresee that in India, as the income group of the people is increasing, as the middle class population is increasing, and as the both males and the females are working, there is a need of organized retail in this country. So he perceived the opportunity that instead of traditional kirana stores in the country, there is an opportunity that there is a need of organized retail, where in a proper environment people can come, make a choice and make purchases, and purchases is being made not for the sake of purchase only, means they have a happy experience of purchase. While purchasing also, the music is on in the stores, you are enjoying that with your kids and all in good environment, you are purchasing. So it gives a different experience. So as the income group is increasing, as the income middle class population is increasing, you foresee that there is a need of organized retail. By perceiving that opportunity in the environment, he started all these organized retails, and he started this Big Bazaar and retail store, fashion store, Pantaloon and all these stores, and it is a big success. It is still in India, it is one of the largest organized retail store in India. So at the right moment, at the right time, he foresee the opportunity that is there in the environment for organized retail in this country. Second step is establishing objectives. Objectives specifying the results expected indicate the end points of what is to be done. Enterprise objective should give directions to the nature of all major plans. Formulation of objective should be done in a hierarchy, starting from setting up of general goals for major departments to subordinate departments, and moving from long-term to short-term orientation. Everyone should be involved in framing those objectives, as higher participation leads to higher motivation in the achievement of these objectives. So there are 3-4 things which we have identified in establishing objective. First is specifying the results expected. That is, as far as possible, while plan, you quantify the results that are expected from the organization, from the different departments, from the different functions. Should be done in a hierarchy. That is right from top up to the bottom for all levels of managers at each area of the function of the management, the objective should be established. So means for all hierarchical level, objective should be clear. Similarly, everyone should be involved. For making the plans successful, you must involve everybody in the organization, because unless there is a commitment of the people who are trying to achieve those objectives, the organizational efficiency will not improve. So in order to make the plans effective, it is an important need at the planning stage itself that all the people who are involved in the execution of the plans should be involved in the making the plans itself. The third step is considering the planning premises. Premises means what are your assumptions under which you are planning. Planning is concerned with the future, which is uncertain, and every planner is using conjecture about what might happen in future. Therefore, the management is required to make certain assumptions about the future. These assumptions are called premises. Assumptions are the base material upon which plans are to be drawn. The base material may be in the form of forecast, existing plans, or any past information about policies. For example, a FMCG company, fast-moving consumer goods industry, for example, say Dabur, Patanjali, or you may say Colgate, Hindustan Unilever. When they are planning for their sales, they are making certain assumptions about the income of the people, about the population, about the choice of the consumers, about the change in the fashion. They take into account certain considerations. These are their assumptions, and on the basis of these assumptions, that this will be the income growth, this will be the size of the middle class population in this country, this is the size of the population, this is the sex ratio, and so on and so forth. And on the basis of these assumptions, they forecast their share. And what is their market share? What is the market share of the competitor? Is the competitor is launching new product? Means there are certain assumptions about the environment. And on the basis of these assumptions, they forecast their sales, they forecast their profit. Next is identification of alternatives. See, I said while talking of the characteristics that it's a choice making. Choice making means that whenever you make plans, there are different options which are available to you. For every decision which you take, there are different alternates. You have to identify out of these alternates. First of all, you have to identify which alternates are available. While planning itself, you have to identify that how many alternates or what are all alternates available. Like you're looking for a new venture. When you're looking for a new venture, you want to start your startup. For startup, in which business you want to go? What are different businesses in which you can enter? You have to find out your alternates. That you have to keep in mind your own strength. You have to keep in mind your own weaknesses. You have to find out that which all businesses you can go for. Like in this step, manager should list as many available alternatives as possible for reaching those objectives. The focus of this step is to search for and examine alternative course of action, especially those not immediately apparent. There are certain course of action which are not apparently available, but you have to find out them. There is seldom a plan for which reasonable alternatives do not exist, and quite often an alternative that is not obvious proves to be the best. Means you have to list the different alternatives that are available, and because you will take decision on the basis of those alternatives. If the alternates available with you is very limited, obviously the choice will be also from those limited alternatives. And probably if you have not listed out all the possible scenarios or all the possible alternatives, you may miss out the good one or the best alternatives. So you're in the planning process, and the step involved is that you have to find out through the help of experts, through the help of media, through the help of various sources. You have to find out what are the alternates that are available to you. Next step is evaluation of alternatives. Weighing the pros and cons of each alternate. Each course will have a variable which have to be weighted against each other. The positive and negative aspect of each proposal need to be evaluated in the light of the objective to be achieved. In the previous session, I said if you want to raise money, that you have different alternates. Each of the alternate, like if you are raising money through equity, will you be able to get the benefit of the trading on equity? I mean, if the equity is enlarged to a great extent, whether you are able to control that much equity or not, whether by raising a very large amount of equity, whether the company will able to increase its earning per share, which is the ultimate goal of the organization. Means each of these source has its own merits. And equity, as you know, there is no fixed liability that arises because of raising money through equity. Means there is one of the good advantages of raising money through equity. Means the point I am trying to make that you have to weight all pros and cons of each of the alternatives. So the positive and negative aspect of each proposals need to be evaluated in the light of the objectives to be achieved. In financial plans, for example, the risk-return trade-off is a very common. For every investment that you make, you see what is the risk involved and what is the benefit, what is the return involved. We say we should suppose you want to make some investment. There are various alternates. You can invest in the bank FD, you can keep the money with yourself, and you can invest in the gold, you can invest in the real estate, you can invest in the fixed deposits, you can invest in the equity market. All these sources, all these investments have their own risk, their own benefits, and own limitations. Like if you invest in the real estate, I mean, real estate, it is being said in India, this real estate is very good investment, it gives good return. But real estate is not that much liquid as the equity market is. So you will have to find out the pros and cons of each alternative. You are making a good investment, but for making that investment, out of those alternatives, you have to see that what are the pros and cons of each alternative. Next is selection of a plan. This is the real point of decision making. The best plan has to be adopted and implemented. An ideal plan is the most feasible, profitable, and with least negative consequences. Most plans may not always be subjected to a mathematical analysis. In such cases, subjectivity and the manager's experience, judgment, and at times intuition play an important part in selecting the most viable alternative. Sometimes a combination of plans may be selected instead of one best course. The manager will have to apply permutations and combination and selecting the best possible course of action. Just now in the previous example, I said you want to make investment and there are various options. You have to see that what is your risk profile. If your risk profile is, for example, you are young, in your age group, people can invest in the equity market because they have a high risk bearing capacity, they have a long age in which they will be earning age, they will be earning throughout their life. And since their earning life is long, so is their risk-bearing capacity. A person who is old, who is a pensioner, his risk-bearing capacity is very limited. For him, equity is not the right alternate for investment. For him, I would say the bank FD or the debt fund is the right alternate where the risk is minimum. And because he wants a fixed return, a person who is having a small pension or there is no source of income, whatever income he has generated during his life, he has to live his livelihood only from that. So his risk-bearing capacity comes, he will have to choose the alternate which suits him. Similarly, in the organization, you will have to choose the alternate that suits the organization, that is best in terms of profit, in terms of minimum cost and least negative consequences. Next step is formulating of supporting or derivative plans. While making plans, we make overall plans and the plans of the different departments. We call it derivative plans, sub-plans. After the best alternative is decided upon, the next step is to derive various plans for different departments or sections of the organization to support the main plan. These are called derivative plans. In an organization, there can be various derivative plans like planning for buying raw material and equipment, developing new products, recruiting and training the personnel. Means for the personnel department, the sub-plan is recruitment and training of the personnel. For production department, developing the new product is the derivative plan. For purchase department, the buying and raw material of the equipment is the derivative plan. So these derivative plans are formulated out of the main plan, and so they support it. Next step is establishing the sequence of activities. After plans are being formulated, the basic and derivative plans are being formulated, the sequence of activities is determined so that the plans are put into action. We also call it scheduling. We make scheduling. Based on the plan at various levels, it can be decided who will do what and at what time. Budgets for various periods can be prepared to make plans more concrete for implementation. Means budget is a quantitative statement. As I said earlier, that as far as possible, if we quantify the plans will be more effective. So at the planning itself, you prepare the budgets. Budgets for various periods can be prepared to make plans more concrete and implementable. Next step, providing for future evaluation. For ensuring that the selected plans are proceeding with the right lines, it is of paramount importance to devise a system of continuous evaluation and appraisal of the plans. It will help in detecting the shortcomings and pitfalls of the plan and taking remedial action well in time. Means that once the plans are being prepared, it is important that you keep on planning, you keep on evaluating those plans. Unless you evaluate the plans, you will not come to know to what extent you are able to achieve those objectives. So these are the various steps involved in the planning process, and if this process is being followed, you will able to develop, you will able to make good plans. And now very briefly, let me discuss essentials of a sound plan. These are the few steps in the making sound planning. Most of these points we have discussed while talking of the characteristics, the advantages, and the process of planning. I would just read them. A sound plan is simple and understandable. Means when you make plan, you design your plan in such a manner so that it is understandable to all. Everybody is clear about the plan. It is flexible and adaptive to dynamic environment conditions. Since environment is dynamic, so you have to make dynamic plans. Different plans must be properly integrated and harmonized with one another so that to ensure unity or consistency in plans. Means there is a need of coordination while making the plans. So different plans must be integrated and harmonized so that the ultimate objective, the ultimate goal, the overall plan, as I said, derivative plans, main plan. So these derivative plans are being designed in a manner so that the main objective can be achieved. It should be practical or feasible and unambiguous. Means the plans which you make, it should be practical, feasible. Practical and feasible means if you make your plan in such a manner that which are not achievable objective, which are not, then it will create frustration amongst the employees. So we say the plan should be designed, the goal should be designed in a manner which are possible, which are feasible, and which are attainable. It should be economical, permit optimum use of available resources. See, sometimes the cost involved in making the plans is so heavy that the benefit arising out of it is less than the cost involved. So while designing your plan, it should design your plan in a manner so that the cost involved in designing a plan is economical and it optimizes the use of the resources. It should be prepared with the consultation of the concerned person. Since planning involves coordination, so the different persons involved, as I said, is a coordinating process. So it should be the fundamental, one of the principle of the sound plan is, one of the essentiality of the sound plan is that it should be by a consultative process. And lastly, I should say that while talking of the essentials of a sound plan, that it should provide standards for the evaluation of performance and action. Means as far as possible, if the plans are quantified, you are able to prepare the budgets, you are able to quantify the plans, so it will be easy for you to evaluate those plans while actual performance takes place. You can compare your plans with the actual performance so that you can know to what extent these plans becomes effective or what is the achievement in that direction. Thank you.
With this note, thank you, sir. Thank you so very much for giving us this session on planning, dear friends. We will be talking more on planning in our forthcoming sessions. You have watched us, and we would request you to watch us again and again, as we are going to upload this lecture on YouTube. And afterwards, if you feel that there is certain questions to be answered, then do write to us at info.cec@nic.in. This is the ID where you can post your feedbacks as well as your questions too. We will be meeting again very soon. Till then, take care. Goodbye. Thank you, sir. Thank you once again.
Thank you.